Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. We don't usually have these technical problems, but we don't usually have laptops with Linux on them. Sorry. And we don't usually have problems with the cable and laptops with Linux on them. Good. Thanks for coming. We are at the Austin Blockchain Collective monthly community meetup. So if you are here for something else, you're in the wrong place. But there is pizza here, unusually, so grab a slice of pizza. Thank you for all your help, by the way. Thank you. Good. So, quick spiel for me about the Blockchain Collective, and then we'll do some shout outs, and then Paul Snow from Factom will present. If there is one thing you leave here tonight other than Paul's presentation that's of use, it's the URL of the Austin Blockchain Collective, which is that, austinblockchaincollective.com. And the reason you need that is because if you go there to that website, you can find links to everything that kind of we do. So links there's information on the website, and there's links there to our Medium blog and our Twitter feed and our LinkedIn group and stuff like that, and our meetup group. So that's what you really need to take away. If you are into Twitter, the handle ATX Block Collect is the handle to follow. And if you like to tweet, then if you include #Austin Blockchain in your tweets, and if it's about blockchain and Austin, someone will retweet them and like them. So amplification of your tweets for free, which is not bad. We're also, as I say, on Medium with a blog. Our blog, every Monday, we do a community news blog. Also, every Monday, we tweet out about the meetups coming up that week. So it's really useful to be on Medium and follow our blog. It's useful to be on Twitter and follow our tweet feed. And even on LinkedIn, we're getting some content put up there, partly because of young Courtney here, who's putting stuff up. So thank you, Courtney. So that's my way of saying we do stuff, such as it is. Why are we here? Why is the Austin Blockchain Collective in existence? That's because we are here to put Austin on the global blockchain map. Now, interestingly, the other week I got email from a journalist for a publication, a payments publication in New York City, and he said to me, I'm doing a series about blockchain centers, and I've just written about Crypto Valley in Switzerland, and I want to write about Austin next. And I could have kissed him. I mean, that's, I think, pretty good. People are beginning to realize there's a center of excellence here. The reason why we think that we should be on the map is because there's lots happening here. There are between 130, 140 companies in the blockchain space with a presence here in Austin. I haven't got any exact handle because there are some new ones joining the collective. A couple of the ones are kind of merging and moving it elsewhere. But net, the number is going up, which I think, considering we're coming out of crypto winter and coming out of kind of malaise in enterprise blockchain, is pretty damn good that we've stood up. All of those companies are listed on the website. Also, all the meetup groups in Austin that I know about are listed on the website. So it's a good place to go to find out things. The basic mission of the collective is to advocate for, showcase, and nurture blockchain and crypto innovation, i.e. companies doing things here in Austin. And we do that by a number of ways, this meetup being one of them, and we hope to be doing more activities. One of the reasons why we can do a bundle of things for the community for free is because we have people who give us money because they believe in what we're doing. They have vision. And these are, as of today, the updated list. There are actually a couple of new companies on the list. Thank you to Factom, by the way, for being on the list. Capital Factory's on the list because they have helped us ever since we got going by providing space, not just for this meetup and for some other meetups, but for doing some ad hoc meetings. A couple of new companies on the list, and I've got to find them. Amchart is one, and Deep Hive is another. Both of those are on the list because they've joined very recently as a result of what we are doing in the blockchain and healthcare space, which we have talked a bit about and which we are going to formally announce fairly soon. I would have an exact date, but it's got to go through marketing communications people at Dell Medical School, who we're working with. But very soon. Amchart, by the way, is a company in the healthcare space. They're owned by a much bigger company who are doing a lot of blockchain things, including running a crypto hedge fund based here in Austin. And Deep Hive is an interesting company with their own distributed ledger technology, which is actually, when I looked at it, it was really sort of could be used for a number of industries, but they're very focused on healthcare. So they're around. Another new name on this slide, but a company that's actually been with us for a while, is the name of Abstract. And maybe a good, Corey, do you want to get up and do a quick 1 minute about Abstract at this point? Yeah, come here and use the mic because otherwise people can't hear you.
All right, thank you. So a lot of y'all know me. My name is Corey Siegel, and I was a co-founder of a company called Vault Wallet. We initially founded the company to provide a wallet experience for security and basically make it very easy to use for adoption. Along that journey, we realized that there was a need for more of a middleware play, kind of a picks and shovels, batteries, tires for car companies sort of thing. And also we noticed that there are a lot of companies that use the word vault in a lot of different solutions. So we have gone through a rebranding process, and Vault Wallet is now being pushed down to a product level just for our consumer wallet. But our actual company is a middleware play where we provide key management, both non-custodial key management as well as authentication and a lot of full stack services, where essentially you take an application, we're able to wire it in onto a mobile device, onto any blockchain that you want very quickly through APIs. And there's a lot of other benefits, but that's basically what we are. We're a middleware play, just like a car company goes and buys tires and batteries. They don't create themselves, but every car company and every car needs tires and batteries to actually run. So that's what we do as a middleware play, and that's why we rebranded ourselves. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And you'll be hearing more about Abstract via the collective and other means. Anyway, so this is the slide to say thank you to everyone who supports us, to provides funding to allow us to do things. Is there anyone else from any other of our patrons and supporters here who wants to say anything? Or did you all decide you wanted to go to the bar instead? Probably that, yeah. Never mind. Thank you all the same. Logistics, next meetups. This meetup happens on the third Monday of every month here in this room. The next meetup is on June 17th. It's about something called non-fungible tokens. And Courtney here will be presenting that. And does anyone who here, put your hand up if you know what non-fungible tokens are? Quite a few of you, not a lot. Good. I thought they were really stupid, but I read an article Courtney wrote in CoinDesk and realized they're not stupid. They could be really useful. So she's going to really talk about the really useful aspects of them and not so much about the stupid aspects of them. Anyway, so that's next month. We're also we realised we didn't really have a spring social this year, And so we're going to do some happy hours as well in June, July, August. Not sure exactly where yet, but I will know very soon. We're going to do them in different places. We'll do one north, one south, one east, and we'll tell you all about them. And they'll be very informal. Come along, have a drink, chat about non-fungible tokens and other things. Okay. Tonight's meetup agenda. In a second, we'll have some shout-outs from the audience. Then we've got a feature presentation from Paul Snow at Factom, and then a chance for some further networking, and we can always go down to the bar to continue that. So at this point, any shout-outs from the audience? You've got one. I'd like you to use the microphone simply because we can get you for the audio. We're live streaming this. Apparently the live stream's working. And I hope that also means the recording will work. So if you say something really dumb, it will be on the internet forever. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Grant Rostig, and I'm a modern C++ programmer who has some understanding of the mathematics of various things. And I'm looking for a project to work on, or perhaps a contract or a job. Thanks.
Thank you. Who next? Martin. Aren't you getting married soon?
Well, I can't come to your presentation because I'm on my honeymoon.
Yeah.
That'll be more fun.
Maybe. I'll tell you afterwards. So, Omnitude, we presented in October, November last year. Those some of you may recall. We're in a growth activity at the moment. We're recruiting, and we're recruiting here and globally as well. About 10 to 12 positions. You might be interested. And they range from developers, UI developers. Hyperledger is our background, and therefore we're looking for Hyperledger developers as well.
Is that Fabric Hyperledger?
Yep. Fabric. Fabric. I'll get you later. So on our website, omnitude.tech/careers, you'll find all the details on how to apply. And if you know some good people, let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any more shout-outs before we get going? I'm sure there must be some. Some people want to say something. Dustin. Hello. Dustin co-founded the collective with me. He's sitting back here all quiet. You went to New York City.
I did, yeah.
What happened there?
Blockchain week.
Boring. We've got Austin Blockchain Month here in Texas in October. We do things bigger here in Texas. Anything to say?
No, just got back. Nothing in particular. Interesting to see the STO market sort of evolve. So I'm pretty active in that space, but it's coming along. I think a lot of the interesting people think Bitcoin's going to 10,000 or back to 5. Anyone? Paul Snow, 10,000 Bitcoin. 10,000. All right, we got at least one buyer out there. So.
That's good. That probably wasn't investment advice. Chris, do you want to say something? Didn't you open source something?
Yeah, so we did open source. Chris Clayson, runs strategic partners at Digital Asset, also on the Hyperledger board. We open sourced DAML recently, been getting quite a bit of uptake on bringing DAML to other ledgers, including rumors of someone who may be presenting tonight. So should have quite a few more announcements. We have a big conference in London coming up in June, and expect more ledger partners to be announced then.
Great. Sure.
Hi, my name is Peter Smisenko. I work for a coffee trading company called Falcon Coffees as a digital traceability project manager. And I just wanted to give a shout out both to Omnitude and Topple, who we both had really productive talks with. And if anybody has additional, emerging technologies that could be leveraged in commodity supply chain traceability, I'd be really interested to have a conversation after.
Right. A fellow East Austinite too. Anyone else? One more from Courtney.
Hi, I'm starting to do a little bit of consulting work, and so my background is in not coding, but a lot of business operations and business cases, and I've been working on that in blockchain space for about the past 2 years. So if any of you are super early stage startups or haven't formed yet and have all sorts of questions like what kind of business structure should I create, is this proposition a good idea? Is what I'm doing legal? I am an awesome person to help you answer those questions, and I would be more than happy to sit down and have some quick chats with folks and see if they're interested in moving further with that. But yeah, that's
Great. Thank you, Connie. Anyone else? We'll move on. Was it? Oh, I'm sorry. Hey.
Hi, I'm Jim O'Quinn, and we are working on the IOST blockchain, which has the JavaScript JVM engine built into it. So I'm looking IOST. IOST. So we're looking for IOST, Internet of Services. And we're looking for a couple JavaScript programmers. So if anybody know JavaScript programmers, so if anybody would like to talk about that, hit me up afterwards.
Yeah. Chat afterwards because I don't know what that blockchain is. So, good. Anyone else? Any more? Super. Otherwise, delighted to introduce Paul Snow, founder, CEO of Factom, legend in the blockchain world, legend here in Austin. Factom is 5 years old this month, and which is incredible. So congratulations. Also, I think Paul is probably, it's either between Paul and Dustin, the first blockchain person I ever met in Austin. So thanks for your mentorship. Over the floor's yours to talk about Factom, what you've been doing, what you're about, and know you'll be happy to take questions after.
Absolutely.
Over you go.
Thank you very much. Pete Harris isn't kidding. We date back to 2013 with the Bitcoin meetups that were running around here, and we both got in fairly early in doing conferences and whatnot. Pete has done a great deal for the community here in Austin, connecting all of you guys. So I really do appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all. All right, show of hands, how many of you are in a blockchain company? How many of you aren't but would like to be? I just thought I'd ask. I was just curious. Factom is a blockchain company. The origin of Factom dates back to a conversation where I was talking about the horrible state of validating software that's going into products and is going into systems and servers and whatnot, and how complicated the problem is, largely because there wasn't a global trustable registry that people could build that says, this is my company, this is my product, these are the versions of my product, so that you could automate with third-party tools that when you were installing software, it was really the software from Google or really the software from little company XYZ. And I said it just couldn't be done because there's not a global registry. And then I paused and realized, oh wait, so the blockchain provides the ability to create this global registry. But to create a global registry, what you really need is data. And so Factom is designed to separate the enabling technology Bitcoin has, which is the immutable ledger, from the coin application, which was the first application to ever run on an immutable ledger. And so that's basically what Factom is, along with trippable things. Okay, so about Factom, we have a bunch of customers and investors that have gone in to support Factom. And we're trying to solve basically the issues of data, scalability, all this other kind of stuff. I'm going to skip through a lot of stuff. By the way, how many minutes do I have? What should I be aiming at? Okay. All right. Anybody who, yeah. If anybody begins to think this is dragging on, just snore loudly, and I'll take that as a hint. Too bad I'm so old I can't hear you. So if I were to boil down the technology that Factom built, is the first thing it built was a two-token system. The two-token system recognizes both the need for a Bitcoin-like technology and a Hyperledger-like technology. In the case of Bitcoin, it provides a token that incentivizes everyone to run the network, because when they do their job, they get these tokens. They can go on exchanges and exchange it for real money, or exchange out of real money into USD, whatever your opinion is about real money. But you can pay your bills. The other half of it is you just need a strict business plan. No weird cryptocurrency, no money service business, money transfer business, no hacker risks. You need to just be able to use the utility of the blockchain. So what happens in Factom is we have a token called the factoid that is the tradable token, and it provides the ability to give people incentives to work within our ecosystem. And at this point in time, more or less, we're issuing grants to, in the protocol, the grants are being issued to something of the tune of about $4 million a year, give or take, to help incentivize and capitalize building inside of the infrastructure. On the other hand, the two-token system does act like Hyperledger in that you burn those tradable tokens and you get a non-tradable token called an entry credit. And you can think of it as prepaid fees. It's kind of like you lay out some money for some forever stamps from the post office, and then no matter what the postage is, one of those stamps gets your first class mail delivered. Okay, for those that are too young, there used to be this thing called the Postal Service. Anyway, the other aspect of Factom from the very beginning was building digital identity. If you can't identify parties, and if parties cannot prove that a statement or a fact or some data is data from them, then you can't build a system where you can register software. Because what you want is the developer to say, yes, this is my product, and for the development team to say, yes, this is the new version of the product, and create it on a blockchain someplace where it can be found so that people installing software can be sure that they're installing the correct stuff. Okay, but that problem also goes into supply chain. Is this product really coming from this fair trade organization in a developing country? Did it really get handled properly across the ocean? And is it really the same product that I'm seeing here at Whole Foods that left the free trade farm, what, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, right? So you need digital identity. Yeah, two-token model, it's great. All right. So digital identities inside of Factom go a little bit beyond what the W3C digital identity initiatives have been talking about. This is the architecture that we actually use to run the entire protocol and have been doing so since January of 2017. And that is that, first of all, you have to pay attention to key management. How many of you have never lost a password? Okay, Grant. Okay, we have one perfect guy. It's probably because he kept the password, safely in his C++ somewhere. So the bottom line is most of us lose passwords. And furthermore, passwords have to be revoked, and passwords have to be cycled. Maybe you didn't lose the password, but you're just thinking that maybe it's been compromised, so you want to cycle your passwords. So Right at the very beginning, Factom created a hierarchical set of passwords, which simply means that some passwords have more priority than, some keys have more priority than other keys. So the keys that you're installing on your mobile devices and the keys that you're putting on your servers are the lower priority keys from keys that you're holding in warm storage, which are lower priority keys than the keys you're holding in cold storage. Okay? That way, when your keys are compromised, you go to cold storage and you sign messages onto the blockchain, which invalidates keys and recycles them into new keys. Okay? This is fundamental to Factom. It's also fundamental to Factom that all data is organized in user chains. So my user chain could be Paul, CEO, Factom. Yay! Right? That could be my chain. Brian, chief scientist, can be another chain. And Dustin, expert at all things, could be another chain. And those chains can be set up with their own keys. And I can cryptographically prove what is in Dustin's chain compared to the chain that's managing Brian's identity, which is different from the chain that's managing my identity. Okay? And that means that the problem of validating keys is about perusing a much reduced data set, not going over an entire blockchain. And it's public, at least at the proof layer. This allows you to assign identities cheaply, not just to people, but to IoT devices, to processes. Like, for instance, an organization can have an identity, even though an organization isn't a person, unless you're talking to the government and it involves money. It can be assigned to an instance of a piece of software running in real time. It can be an installation of something. It can be anything. And when data flows from one component through a person, through a computer system, through a transaction, all of these things have to be identified, or the parties involved in verifying that something happened in the real world have to be identified if you're really going to track the goods and services, goods produced in one place, and ensure that they are provided on the other place. Let me give you a simple use case. We're in Texas, right? Oil is king here. Do you know one of the biggest problems that we have in Texas right now is that somebody will pump oil and put it in one pipe, and it comes out another pipe, and they can't get the billing right. In, out, trouble with the billing. One of the reasons is a lot of the oil is produced by many different parties. Each one of those has their own agreement. So the oil actually needs to be understood in the context of the agreement. And they don't hire accountants to look at meters when the oil's coming out of a pipe. Who knew? You would kind of think they would, right? No. So what you can do with the blockchain is you can create an identity for the person, you can create an identity for the pipe, and expose only the information that the guy reading the meter has to read in order to properly document the oil coming out so that the guy can get paid the correct amount. Millions and millions of dollars are paid or not paid inappropriately because they can't handle this simple problem of moving a product from one place to another. So that's traceable and immutable audit trails and what you can do with identities and key management. So I want to skip to this slide. Now this slide shows you kind of what we're talking about. In a typical blockchain, what you have is a lot of data. But the data is not related to each other. It's not cryptographically linked. There's no effectively provenance over time of that data. So these little color-coded applications putting data on Factom end up with chains that hold their data and can be cryptographically validated, proved, and perused separate from the other data in the blockchain. Most blockchains don't have this structure, and so it's more like looking through the data to see how things are connected. There can be, yes ma'am.
I might be thinking this question just because of the pretty colors on the screen, but are the sort of the divided out segments of the Factom blockchain, are those almost more like colored coins that are pegged to the actual token, or is it something that is within the token as opposed to connected to the token?
Well, that's a good question. The answer is that there's no token at this level. What you really have is like records in a file, and so when you pay for a record with an entry credit, which is accounted separately from your data, you get a sheet of paper of some data and it's stuck in your file. And when you put the next letter in, it's cryptographically tied to both the file and all the records that came before it, so that you can run through your file and prove what should be in the file and what isn't in the file. And by the way, the most important question for any blockchain is not proving something is, it's proving that something is not. The double spin problem literally is nobody has spent this coin. Now, how do you know nobody spent this coin? You can look through all the pretty dots and there's no transaction that spent it. There's not a trail of hashes or links between the transactions. It's merely the fact that you've looked at the transactions that you know it hasn't been spent. So in our case, what we're doing is we're actually creating those links in the blockchain so they're connected together by a chain ID and not a address, which is like color coins, because, get back to key management, if I lose the addresses, how do I track my data? So it can't be addresses. It needs to be some sort of organization that is data oriented in order to solve the problem. This doesn't exist. Simple, go ahead.
Is that where the question of fungible assets comes into play? In other words, if you're dealing with an oil scenario, you could have loss or spillage. You could have loss or spillage in a oil scenario. So is that where the fungible topic came up, or is that a separate context?
Okay. So is there anyone that wants fungible and non-fungible explained in just like a sentence? Yes. Okay. Fungible things are things that have mold all over them, and non-fungible are mold-free. All right. Fungible things are things that can be put in a pile and you can take one out and everybody is just as happy with the one you took out as some other one that went into the pile. Non-fungible tokens are specific to themselves. So a non-fungible token example would be like a token that represents art. And so you would have a token that represents the Mona Lisa, for example. Or a particular share of stock issued by a company, or any number of things. So with the oil, it's very interesting you talked about spillage, because what that implies is the complexity of something as simple as putting something in one pipe and pulling it out of the other. What you have in the real world is you have things can go wrong. Pipes can get clogged. Pipes can get diverted. Oil can be spilt. The guy could fail to turn a knob and it just never went into the pipe in the first place. So what you have in the real world is documentation of all the exceptions so that you can get the billing right at the end of the period. And so what the blockchain oriented about data is, the one guy can certify that he's put the oil in the pipe. That acts almost like a messaging that there is oil coming down this pipe. The other guy can, on the other end, can document it coming out. And if it doesn't come out, an inspection can be done and they can document what they found, a spillage. And now you've got an agreement that specifies what you do with the spillage, because if the company that owns the pipe is the one that's taking the oil, maybe they're responsible. If the pipe belongs to the guy selling it, maybe he's responsible, right? All spelled out in an agreement. Does that make sense? But it's all data. So, for example, everybody talks about using tokens for real estate. But there is a big monkey wrench in the gears when it comes to the blockchain tokenizing real estate, and it's just called the law. When the court says you don't own this property, he does, that won't be on the blockchain. So you have to be able to basically create a record to reconcile the real world with what the intentions were for a smart contract or any other sort of mechanism for managing real estate. It's a data problem, not a coin problem. It's not about who signed a coin. It's about what happened in the real world. Yes, sir.
Is the classification of the data, is that done manually, or is it automatically assigned by some sort of user ID, this person makes this transaction, so
Can-
categorized this way?
Can I borrow your notebook? This is what we are. Which means when composition book was sold, well, it was made in Mexico and shipped here, they had no specifications of what any of these pages mean. So what they do is they allow you to document and order what data you're recording, and you're effectively signing it because it's your handwriting, it's your data. You can present it and say, this is my journal of what happened. So what Factom is paper. So we produce the ability for you to create your records, your ability to create your digital identities, and your ability to sign the data that goes into the folder and countersign it with other parties. And then that can be validated and verified later when there's a dispute or just to get the billing right or whatever your use case is.
Okay, so it is, I guess, it is done manually when that data is entered, you classify it.
Well, your application does whatever the heck your application does. So it's your application, or the application that you're running, or the company that you're working with. So let me put it another way. The way we're viewing identity is that identity needs to exist within a model of an organization, a model that includes the processes the organization is involved in, the participants in those processes, the roles those participants play, and the sets of transactions or recordings that they are within their role and as a participant can add to the process. Now, all that modeling can be done easily, and we provide, as a company, we provide tools to help you do that. But that's done up and above the protocol, not within the protocol. It's not a smart contract the way Ethereum thinks of it. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, who doesn't know what a hash is? Does anybody need an explanation of a hash or a Merkle tree? Dang, I love my explanation of Merkle trees. Okay, so what's that? Ah, I'm glad you asked. Okay, I grew up in Louisiana. There is this thing called the NFL, and there's the New Orleans Saints. There was one valid Super Bowl in the history of mankind in 2014 when the Saints rode to victory. Now, when I want to check the record to see how the Saints are being abused as they were in this current season, all I have to do is watch the games that the Saints play and have some idea of the sports bracket that they're playing in. I don't actually have to know anything about the Bruins or the Yankees, right? All I need to know about is the Saints. And so a Merkle tree is where you've taken hashes of things, which is a near perfect fingerprint for a digital thing. Take those two hashes, hash them together, you get another hash. It's like the winner of a game. And I only have to follow through the sports bracket to see the Merkle root, which is the champion. And as I've made clear, the only champion in the NFL is the Saints. Okay, that's my explanation of Merkle trees.
So what you're saying is that there's an opportunity to do this for like basketball brackets.
Yeah, we could be hashing. What's that sport? I'm only familiar with football. I'm sorry. I'm just playing that joke a little too far. The thing is if you can picture a sports bracket and you can see how those combine to a conclusion, that's exactly how hashes combine to get a conclusion at the end. And when I want to prove something, I only have to prove the branches of the tree of the element I care about. I don't have to look at anything else. That's why I can go through my whole explanation about the NFL and the Saints and never mention, one of the other hockey teams that play in the league. Okay. Yes, sir. Yeah.
For me, I'm trying to reconcile the difference between a chain of transactions or a chain of data and a chain of blocks. So in the pretty colors in the previous chart, you had a chain of data. What's the relationship between a chain of blocks?
Okay, so I've kind of talked about the fact that we have a tradable token. It lives in its own blockchain inside of Factom. All of the data exists in its own architecture. So if I'm talking about the data, and if I were to pull up the code, when we're looking at data, there's no transaction fees from coin transactions. There's no coin transactions at all. In fact, in our code, the coin transactions are all segregated away in its own little ghetto that's not really allowed into the utility of the greater Factom. It's all done in one piece of code that validates transactions and records them in the coin blocks, right? Just like Bitcoin or any of the other blockchains. And those blocks live alongside the blocks of data. So, right, yeah. So let's look at it over here. So what we've done is this is not the best slide. I think I have a better one. By the way, our marketing team came up with these beautiful slides. They're the prettiest slides I've ever worked with. And this is my first time driving them. This one. Okay, so what we're doing is we have a directory block, and we have this concept of entry blocks. You get inside of a 10-minute period, there is a entry block for every chain that gets some data written to it. Okay, and linking up all of the entry blocks for a particular chain on top of the blockchain is how I can prove which of these entries belong in that chain. Does that make sense? So if you've got, let's say, 100 factoid transactions, then they all go into a structure that's like an entry block, but we use that term for data, but let's just call it an entry block. All those factoid transactions go in that entry block, and the hash of that entry block goes into the directory block. And so I can go through the directory block and I can find all the factoid transactions and pick out only those blocks, and those blocks have cryptographic links between them that let me prove all of that without looking at any of the data. The same thing happens the other way around. If I'm looking at a chain for oil, I only have to find the ID of the chain in the various directory blocks where data was written, and I'll have cryptographic links between that data, and I can prove everything that's in that subchain, so to speak. Okay? This got way more technical than I expected. Sorry. Let me talk about our products. Here's another truism. Configuration management in deploying blockchains is complicated because you have to get all the settings right, everything figured out. You have to track what you've written to the chain, make sure it went in the chain. If it didn't go in the chain, resubmit it, whatever it takes in order to build your record or implement whatever application you're trying to build on top of a blockchain. So what Connect does, it allows you raw access to the data utility inside of Factom. And this is a product that we run at Factom Inc. This is how we make our money. That means that somebody building a POC or building a entry-level product doesn't have to set up an entire blockchain-oriented thing. They can use web APIs to write their data into the blockchain, and they have all the flexibility that even your power users doing it themselves have, in the sense that Factom really only supports building chains and writing entries and pulling entries out. So that's all you really need to build your application. So you can get a subscription from us, and you can write data into the blockchain. We also provide sandboxes, so you get to build your application against a fake blockchain until you're happy that it's going to work, and then it's just a little switch to go live. So that's our Connect product. The Integrate product, the new generation of this is coming out June 1st, and it allows the modeling of organizations, the modeling of processes, participants, roles, all that, all with W3C compliant digital identity, so that you can go and not just validate that a identity signed this thing, but you can validate that other identities have authorized that identity to play that role in a particular process, and that is a particular transaction that they're allowed to do. So Integrate comes out June 1st.
So do you see that being used for a lot of KYC?
Just repeat.
Do you see that being used for a lot of KYC use cases?
Yeah, see, one of the problems with KYC is, how many of you have an identity? I suckered you. You knew when I asked that question you didn't have an identity. What you have is not an identity. What you have is a trivia contest. Anyone who can answer all the questions that are in this handful of cards, that includes my, like my health card, it actually has a passport card, it has a driver's license, potentially it has a social security card, but it doesn't, but whatever, right? All you have to do is win this trivia contest and you're me. Question is, can you steal a trivia contest? Answer is no. Your identity can't be stolen because your identity isn't a thing. It is just a set of questions. Now here's another question for you. Let's say company X has your social security number. How do they know? Who did they verify your social security number from? Oh, your credit report. Well, are they the Social Security Administration? Are we going to claim that credit reporting agencies don't make mistakes? Because if you think that, you might have checked out 2008 and such, right? So you don't have an identity, but if you begin to validate identities using a blockchain-based architecture that can record the reasons behind the answers that are given to questions, and if you answer the substantive question, not the specific question, the blockchain can bring about a world where we have a way more privacy. And it becomes private because company A can ask an identity manager, is this person over 18? And the identity manager can accept whatever data, biometric, whatever it is, and come back and say yes. And on the blockchain, they can record both the query and their answer. which means that the merchant should never have to have the responsibility of validating an identity which contains a whole lot of information they don't need just to get that question answered. But at the same time, if you're going to have a service that does this identity management and keeps your identity private, they have to be responsible for the questions they hand out, the answers they hand out, questions they answer. Did I lose anyone? Well, the question is, what is the input that's validated? The input that's validated is that the identity manager made an assertion, not that you're over 18. This is what happens in the real world.
So my question is, essentially, I guess there's still humans involved in the process. So what prevents someone from mimicking me, going to the identity manager and creating a record that says that, hey, I'm Jim O'Quinn and I'm over 18, when it's really not me?
Well, the thing is, an identity manager can spend the time and energy to actually verify your identity. Like actually ask for all the KYC. How many people, has anybody opened up a bank account in the last 6 months? You have? How much did you give them? Everything. Yeah. I'm surprised you have a shirt. So they can do that level of security because at a bank account level, that's the kind of security they can afford to do for the product and service that they're providing, right? The identity manager can do that, but apply that same level of scrutiny to simple questions like, yeah, you should be able to let this girl into the bar, or this guy to buy a pack of smokes, right? So there's a lot of interest in the blockchain to create this market for identity managers that are your representative as opposed to identity managers. Who are your identity managers today, by the way? Banks? No, Google doesn't. Google only accounts that your address is involved with something. They don't.
What do you think the future marketplace of identity managers looks like? Is it there's lots of consolidation, a few huge players, or just tons of very distributed smaller players, specialized?
I have a very good answer for that. Yes. It's hard to say. I do think that there will be competition between identity managers because I think the data will overlap and you'll be able to pick who it represents you for these questions at some point in time. But there is a mile and a half of regulations, and that's paper thickness to get through before we have any of this. So maybe 2030? I mean, I don't know. It's just really a tough. It's tough to get banks out of the toll booth. But go back to the banks. The banks are your primary identifiers today. The banks and the institutions associated with the banks are the ones that are checking and proving you are who you are and you're qualified for what you do. Okay? They're the last people we as consumers should be relying on for that role.
So if we're talking about 2030 here, how is this integrate product going to be useful in businesses today?
Well, the main use cases, let's look at any industry that can't make money.
Print money.
That's what I said. Any industry that can't make money, just make it. They have competition and efficiency needs and stuff. So like, for instance, the oil guy, he has a need for identity. He has a need to track utility, and he can get his billing right, and he can use that if he's a consumer of the oil. He can use that as a market advantage that he's fair to the little guys. And if you're a little guy, you can look for that in the market So I think the blockchain is going to seduce the industry, not take over the industry. It's going to seduce it through efficiency gains here, there, and yon until they just can't ignore it.
Hi. I have a question that's a little bit different. So listening to you talk about the two different the way that it's supposed to, you have the factoid token and your and then yeah, the intercredits. I'm curious how you are determining the value of both of them. So if the factoid, for example, if I might be wrong when I think that like the people, so your customers on your BaaS service that write the data, that your grants are going to them on the factoid side. I'm curious if you're also then adding the value of those grants to your asset and your product overall, or how you're kind of valuing the overall value not only of your technology service, but also the different two tokens that you're creating. I'm an accountant. So.
Oh, well, do I have the guy to talk to you? Our CFO can go at great lengths on accounting blockchain. He likes to say that we invented blockchain accounting because it was just so complex to track the assets that we have and all that other stuff. But let me see if I can break it down a little simpler. The token is that the entry credits are created by a value that gets inserted into the blockchain. And there is, in our protocol, a grant that assigns somebody to do that. That happens to be Brian, okay? And Brian every now and then looks, and if he sees that the value is outside of a 20% range for the entry credits at 1/10 of a cent relative to the exchanges, then he adjusts the variable in the protocol and it lines up. And then there are other people in the protocol, other people that are participating in the protocol that produce these really beautiful graphs that show what a miserable job Brian does. They plot actual exchange prices against the exchange rate inside of the blockchain because it's all there. Now I say that, but in reality he's demonstrated that he's made his SLA, at least in the last bit, though. Anyway, so all right, so that's that, and that really doesn't have anything to do with us as a company, other than we're paid a small amount to keep track of that. As far as the grant pools are concerned, there is a fixed issuing of tokens that is prescribed by the software in the protocol. And we have a relatively extensive governance model that determines what grant proposals are accepted and what aren't. And then those grants get paid out of the protocol. So the tokens get created and sent to these people that win grants. And so because the tokens didn't exist prior to issuance, we're modeling this as mining. And if you go look at the IRS's definition of mining, they have a very, very broad and extensive definition of mining that could be easily boiled down to any time a protocol issues tokens, that's mining. Because they don't want anyone to play with how tokens are issued so that they can't get their taxes. So they defined it very broadly. Did I cover most of it? Okay.
Jar that gets filled up with this grant money, and then you, through a vigorous process of a bunch of people, determine who gets access to that cookie jar. It depletes, and you rinse and repeat, right? Yep. Okay.
Corey's a plant. He knows more about Factom than I do. So, guys, I could talk more, but oh, well, I could talk about some of these use cases. Let me just run this by. So I'll just go through the companies. Yuya is a YouTube in China. They're the biggest private content provider, and they're looking to use Factom to create cryptographic proof of the clicks and the billing so they can fairly charge customers and use the blockchain as a differentiator in a very competitive market. TikTok. How many of you know who TikTok is? Yeah, so we know who likes mice. Sorry, come on, it was a children's rhyme. I should get at least a groan from that. So TikTok got into an argument with, who was the other? Baidu. And they did that in China, actually in 2017. The case was decided in January by cryptographic proof of data that Baidu put on the internet that was hashed into Factom, and that caused a bit of a stir in China. The blockchain being used to decide a case between two huge companies in China, and it went to the Chinese version of the Supreme Court. And in the Supreme Court ruling, they said the blockchain can be used as evidence in court. So Factom, this is a big feather in our hat. Factom was used to validate the blockchain in China, the first technology to do something like that. We did a project with Bill and Melinda Gates. We're in the commercialization phase, basically using the blockchain to create the cryptographic proofs behind medical records, but not the medical records themselves. Then we implemented over here a big pile of medical records. So you can think of it as beads and string. And when a patient goes into a clinic and they authorize the clinician to view their medical records, they provide, in a perfect world, they'd provide a key from their smartphone. In the world in South Africa, they go to a kiosk and the doctor tells them which buttons to press. Okay, you know, nothing's perfect. Anyway, and they get effectively a key. That key allows them to match the medical records with their string, which is their history. And in memory, they have provably, all the medical records for that client. And it's important because the clientele is unsophisticated, so they can't be trusted to carry their medical records around. They're very migratory. They can show up at any clinic in the country or even in another country. And there are a host of diseases that carry very, very high social stigma, that word. And so they need to be very private. So what we did was give them a system of salts, and salts are just numbers you add to hashes to obscure them, but doesn't break the cryptographic proof. We divide the medical records up by category and time, so the client can actually give the doctor access to drug history without giving access to treatment history or drug use or personal data. They get to choose, and the doctor gets access to what they choose. And then when the doctor gets done for the day, they turn off the computer and all of the salts go away and you're left with strings and beads. So anyone who compromises the system has no access to the medical records. So it's a really cool project, really cool system, and we're in the process of commercializing it. We're using Factom to secure devices on the border. There's this thing called a wall. A lot of you, do I need to explain that? Or maybe I have to be yelling for you to recognize the conversation. I don't know. In any case, there has always been an electronic wall, and the electronic wall stops all kinds of bad actors. It's not really about integration as much as it is drug running, gun running, human trafficking, you know, the big stuff, right? That's the stuff they're really concerned about. Guess what? All those categories of people have money. You know what you can buy with money? Programmers. So what our task was to create cryptographically secure connections to those devices that prevent them from being spoofed, moved, or manipulated so that data can't be altered. And because the primary trick that the bad guys use is to alter what devices are monitoring to create blind spots that they can drive through. So that's that. And we've got Lori and Ugly Guys. And you know, this is all about honesty and transparency, and about, I believe honesty is subversive. I believe as you create honest systems, they take over dishonest systems. Do I have time for one stupid story? So I'm talking to this guy after I got this. Okay, I'm going to brag too. So I was testifying in front of Congress, and and so I'm over there. And after we were done, the lawyer for the Commerce Committee subcommittee comes running up to me, and he goes, "Okay, no wait, explain to me how this blockchain stuff works, right?" And I'm talking to him, and I'm standing there with my wife, and I said, "Okay," I said, "honesty is subversive. Creating better systems creates more better systems. And here's how it works. Say, all the people in the chairs are crooks." Now, this is where my wife thought this was funny, because I'm waving to where the congressman had been sitting earlier, okay? All right. Think of, they're all crooks, okay? Now, you have a use case that means that one of these guys can't get away with a lie. How do they vote? It doesn't matter that they're all crooks. They don't want to be lied to. Nobody wants to be lied to. So every time there's an issue where it stops people from lying to you, you vote for it. Now, it might only be one or two issues to begin with. But eventually, everybody's kind of impacted by this. And you start resenting the fact that you have to be honest, but that guy doesn't have to be honest. So what do you start doing as a bunch of crooks? You start talking to each other, and you try to figure out how you can get that guy so he can't lie, because, you know, we can't lie. So honesty is a very subversive system. It's at the basis, it's at the very foundation of rule of law. It's let me tell you another story. North Korea, that's one of my favorite lines, okay? And if you heard this one, too bad, you're gonna listen to it again. North Korea they were talked about in the media in 2018 or January, somewhere around there, that they had mined $200 million worth of Bitcoin. Where's the boos and the hisses, right? Boo, hiss, North Korea's making money off of Bitcoin. Terrible, right? You know what the other story that came out just like a month or two earlier? They were counterfeiting the new $100 bill that you can't counterfeit. We spent $3 billion to make sure that you can't counterfeit it. Now, wait a second. Think about it for a second. They were mining Bitcoin, but they were following all of the rules that Bitcoin specifies. There was no attempt at fraud or theft, not in mining Bitcoin. Their hackers do that. On the other hand, there's every trade agreement, every treaty, armies, all the banking financial system, the Secret Service, all protecting the $100 bill, and they're cheating. Now, why is that? Now, why is it that they cheat on the $100 bills, but they can't cheat with Bitcoin? That was what I thought. It actually isn't mathematics, because you actually add up the $100 bills too. So there's math over there. Shut up. Anyway, all right.
There's no shortcut.
Well, there's no shortcut. What it is asymmetry. There's a side that has a hard job, and there's a side that has an easy job. In the case of Bitcoin, what's hard is mining the blocks. You know what's easy? validating blocks. Yes, sir.
I mean, my question is, cool story, but it's illiquid.
Well, not Bitcoin's not illiquid. But
If you're North Korea, it's illiquid.
anyway, here, I agree. I agree to a point, but anybody that wants to transact with North Korea and they send them bitcoins, you know. Anyway, that's not my argument. But let me finish my observation. We can talk about that one because it is a good point. Okay. The point is that it's hard to create the blocks. It's easy to validate them. What happens with printing money? It's easy to print. It's hard to validate. Anytime the answer to a problem is force and complexity to try to stop the behavior, you lose. But if what you have to do either has mathematical complexity built into it, wave to Mr. Math, and it can't be altered because of the cryptology, cryptography, pick a word, and public witness and all this, then you have a very, very hard time changing the record. But you can run through the records very quickly and easily and prove that they're either valid or someone's trying to pull something on you. So what we're trying to do with Factom is extend this asymmetry of creating very immutable records of business processes that are easy to check and validate. It creates efficiency, it creates liquidity. Not all liquidity is money. A lot of times liquidity is just being able to transact with people. And this is the dream. This is what blockchain is really going to do for you. It's going to be able to apply the same kind of honesty that forces parties to do the right thing to all kinds of other areas, not just mining Bitcoin. All right.
I'm wondering about two things. You obviously have some open source code. Do you have products or things that you offer that are in closed source? And what are your different revenue models?
Yeah, the closed source is all the, well, we have a lot of code built up that allows people to model organizations and model everything and verify and validate, and that's our integrate product. And we have servers and infrastructure that allow people to write to the blockchain, and so we can have a software as a service model where people can build blockchain-enabled applications and processes and write through our servers and get their data into the blockchain in a reliable sense. If you know, there are worms that hit the internet. Hadn't happened in a while, but there have been times when you have large outages and things like that. Our service would ensure that your data gets into the blockchain, as long as you can get it to us.
Great presentation. You start with a preamble about somebody wanting to download a software, and then they want to know, who owned that software, right? So currently, for example, I guess you didn't kind of describe, your solution for that. You sort of came with a preamble. So I guess that's the first question: what's the solution for that? And second question is that doesn't Google Store and Apple, they already handle it, right? So how is your solution different from that?
Well, Google and Apple, while being very, very big and wonderful and making our lives so much easier in very, very creepy ways, that's not everything. Furthermore, they themselves have a bunch of software that they rely upon. And enterprise software is generally not going through those channels, and on and on and on. How we do this, or how I would propose that you do this, is you have digital identities for projects, and you have digital identities or attestations for releases that have the hash. You will, if you download Linux from the Linux site, they will give you the hash that you're supposed to check. How many of you, besides Brian and Grant, how many of you check the hash every time you download Linux? Okay, a couple or three people. I have to admit, I look at it. All right, I should check it. I haven't checked it very often. Most people don't check it. Same problem with Pretty Good Privacy. Pretty Good Privacy didn't catch on because it was kind of awkward and hard to use, and people lose your keys, and key management was a problem, and etc. So the blockchain enables you to automate that, so it's not a question of whether I choose to be safe. The system itself is safe. Yes, sir.
I have several questions, but I'll narrow it down to one or two. So, so for the registry, somebody has to maintain that. So what if Factom, for instance, dies, right? Goes away. Like, where is that data? Who manages that data? Where does it go? And I'll just pick another one real quick. So the beads and strings, who manages the identities associated with the whole Bill Gates or Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation?
I'll answer the last one first. They have highly national healthcare. So the National Healthcare Service is managing identities for that aspect. And they're also creating the kiosks to allow people to almost manage their medical records. The issuing of identities is totally self-sovereign. So organizations have to create an identity, they have to establish their identity in the marketplace. And once you have an identity, which can be IBM.com effectively on Factom, it can be something very easy to recognize. Then from that identifier, you issue the identities underneath IBM that can acquire its, basically it's promised that it is managing their identities in that context. But identities have many contexts, which opens the door to fractional identities and identities for temporary purposes and all kinds of other things that might have a cryptographic link when you need to validate or prove something, but otherwise they're not linkable to you to gain more privacy. What? Oh, storage. Storage. Well, okay. Data written to the blockchain is going to be backed up by the protocol. So, I mean, there are parties all over the world that are running the protocol, and they're tracking the data. And we have designs for how to ensure that all the data that's literally written into Factom doesn't go away. And at the same time, some of that data might even be safety listed for GDPR and everything else. Part of the design of Factom is that the data is not part of the proof chain. So if data has to be removed from your system because of GDPR compliance or anything else, then you can be sure that you've eliminated all that. So there's some of this. Most of the time, how many of y'all know GDPR? The right to be forgotten? Okay. Most of the time when this conversation comes up, everybody goes, well, they never thought about the blockchain. Well, this is a bunch of crap. Did you think about the internet? Because there's the Wayback Machine, and all this data that went out on the internet never goes away. It's always somewhere in some cache or whatever. So GDPR had this fatal flaw from the very beginning that you can't remove data from some systems. So what we've done is ensure that you can keep the data off your system so that you aren't liable for using Factom.
So each individual has a cache.
Yeah, they have a cache to whatever amount that they.
So
want. By the way, this is not implemented yet. It's just one of the things that we are implementing. Okay, so I can't really answer a lot of questions of how it's done, because right now everybody has all that data.
And I think, I guess the follow-on question, like, who's incentivized to keep that data? Are all parties in the network ecosystem incentivized to capture and store data for all parties in the ecosystem?
It's a key value store, so despite the fact that probably, I'll make this up off the top of my head, 0.1% of the data that Google holds is actually ever part of a query in the next 6 weeks. It costs them nearly nothing for them to keep the key value store in a database somewhere. And so the people that operate the protocol have an incentive to make sure the data is available. And there are other mechanisms that allow you, like IPFS. If you delete all the instance of your file in IPFS, then the link no longer works. So there is a little of that in all of these architectures, particularly if you're going to keep privacy. Privacy, you can't put it on the blockchain. Don't put private data on the blockchain. Okay. So it's going to be application specific how you solve that problem.
So you mentioned that you provide your software as a service, right?
Yeah.
But do you own your own data center, your own servers, or do you run it on AWS?
We run our servers on Google Cloud Services. So they gave us a deal, so, but we use cloud services. There was a, yeah, you want to hand it to him?
So I got a question on your healthcare. Is that only being used on socialized medicine countries? Have you gotten any adoption in the U.S.? Because my question is, I understand the technology, but the economic incentives in the U.S. for healthcare kind of go the other way.
Have you guys ever seen the flash grow redwood trees they're using in California now? When they have a fire, they plant redwood trees and they go up in the air. You haven't seen that? Well, it's all relative to the industry in healthcare. Compared to how healthcare moves, redwood trees grow really fast. So the answer is, Andrew, one of our founders, was in the healthcare business for a long time, and it was one of his first companies he sold. We're going to have more traction, not necessarily in socialized medicine situations, but in developing countries or countries that are pressed to make a change because they have no other choice. We'll get more movement there than we will get in the Western world, where everybody pretty much makes money as long as people get sick or die. So I'm just being realistic. I don't have a better answer than that. I think you do have the opportunity to knock out simple use cases, and so you just like other things, your simple use cases that increase efficiency and increase profits, and start to spark the imagination of how you can get more efficiency and more profits is likely how this reform works. But it's tough because there's regulations again. Anyway.
One more.
What?
One more question. There's one more.
Oh, two more if you count him.
With proof of stake systems being a bit of a buzz these days, how do you think about the security trade-offs of proof of stake versus proof of work? Do you think there's a point where a proof of stake system could be big enough that it could be more secure than Bitcoin? And if so, how big would it need to be?
Proof of stake and proof of work solve fundamentally different problems. Proof of stake works really, really well in the now, because anything that all of us here wish to decide, we can all agree. But the problem is proving that we agreed here and now, a year from now. because we lose the context. Proof of stake has that problem. If I'm going to prove the historical record, I have to rebuild the context, and that can be massively, massively expensive. And it doesn't work for a verified credential, where what I want to do is send a verified credential that this attribute is good. What I can do for a verifiable credential inside of Bitcoin is I can prove through the Merkle tree, New Orleans Saints won the Super Bowl, right? And I have a Merkle root to a hash in Bitcoin, and then I want it to be really, really secure. I also send the next following 5, 6, 7, 10 block headers. Proves proof of work, 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 proof of work. The New Orleans Saints is the greatest thing. You heard it here, okay? Proof of stake cannot do that. But the problem with proof of work is that proof of work is computationally expensive, and it settles in odd ways. Proof of share can, or proof of stake can settle very, very fast. So proof of stake works better in the now. Proof of work works better to validate the historical record. I predict hybrid. Systems should have proof of work and proof of stake, even if the proof of work is fairly small. That's my answer. Yeah, Decred. Marco, who's no stranger to you all, his system is a hybrid. Yes, sir.
So you talked about Factom Harmony Connect, right? And somebody can try it out. So do you charge once it is up and running, or if somebody wants to build something and do it as a POC, is it free or you charge for that?
I'm really tempted to ask if you understood the concept of a business model, but I'm not going to. The idea is to charge, but the idea is to charge kind of like a cell phone, where the base charge really isn't that bad, but as the volume goes up, then we make more money. There's also a volume discount, just like there was back in the day when there was a lot of emphasis on minutes. The main value add that we provide for business going forward using our platform is the integration opportunities with other people using our platform, and the SDKs that we build to accelerate certain applications, getting updates, basically having some features that you don't have to build yourself. And none of this is done in a way that breaks the cryptographic proof to the blockchain of the data that you have. So you're not relying on us for validation, verification, or history. You're just using us to run your applications. Well, guys, I think. Thank you, screen. Guys, I really appreciate it. I hope if you have any questions, you can talk to me afterwards, and you can find me at paul@factom.com and so forth. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Paul. It's great meetup. This is actually our third birthday of our meetup, by the way. So your fifth birthday, our third birthday. Thanks everyone for coming. No, it's getting late, but I think we might be able to squeeze in a quick beer downstairs if anyone wants to stay. Next meetup is June 17th here in this room. Courtney will be talking about non-stupid use cases of non-fungible tokens, and we're going to, between now and then, we will have a happy hour somewhere in a North Austin bar on June 3rd, but I don't know which bar it is because I actually don't know any bars in North Austin, but I will do soon. Anyway, thanks for coming. See you all soon. And remember, austinblockchaincollective.com. Go to that website. You can get everything you need there. Thanks a lot.